I'm covering a Dylan Burns video called Vaush is Being a Conspiracy Theorist. I don't know what that title means, but he's talking about a panel discussion that includes Destiny, stripper's name, and a bunch of other people I don't know, and Vaush. And they're talking about whether or not George W. Bush behaved in an anti-democratic manner in Florida during the 2000 presidential race. For some weird reason, Vaush is the only one that thinks yes, he did. But they're all trying to gang up on him. And since they're all so fucking wrong, it's less a panel discussion than more like a bunch of teenage boys failing at a gangbang because none of them can get their dicks hard. They're focused on the butterfly ballot, which is a bit of a red herring. That was only ever really a story because it was just so weird. Anyways, the designer of the butterfly ballot happened to be used to be a Democrat.
So again, since nobody here in all the times I've asked it has managed to supply another explanation for why a highly deceptive, completely irregular, and hold on, an unprecedented ballot that just so happened to favor the candidate that was the brother of the governor at the time, please, and was distributed specifically in Democratic counties, like, unless we can find a better explanation for that, incompetence does not sufficiently describe that, okay?
It was designed by a Democrat.
He's so mad. Look at him mad. Look, I can pretend to be mad too. Catherine Harris was a Republican. She was the boss. She was Secretary of State. She was also George W. Bush's election campaign co-chair in Florida. And which is probably not the reason she certified Bush before a recount had been completed. But okay.
Incompetence is a valid description of that. Because
they accidentally stopped the recount.
There's no evidence of the contrary.
There is no evidence accumulated by the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights.
It's just delusion.
It's just
imagination land.
Oh, it's just delusion. It's just imagination land. Yeah, you know what happened in imagination land? The NAACP and the ACLU both sued Florida, and in discovery, they found 12,000 voters disenfranchised. They estimated it was well over 1,000 votes that they could have gotten for Al Gore, at least. And that election was decided by 537. It's imagination land. No, I think what Dylan and what Destiny, stripper's name, are trying to suggest is it's a conspiracy. I think Dylan is trying to put forth, and Destiny, stripper's name, are trying to put forth a conspiracy theory, usually only heard by right-wingers, that the Civil Rights Commission, the ACLU, the NAACP, and the media are all conspiring to sell a narrative that George W. Bush used voter suppression tactics in order to win the in order to get an electoral win for the presidency of the United States, because he did not win the popular vote. Because he's so democratic.
You're just fucking imagining.
We're just imagining. Everything I just said, I just imagined. You can't look any of that information up. It's not public at all. I imagined it in my mind.
You can't tell me if something
I just did.
For example.
In fact, I just did, buddy. I just told you that.
There has been for example, Democrats have had gerrymandering fails an election before that actually were poorly designed and ended up benefiting Republicans.
You mean they redistricted and didn't gerrymander? You know, if a Democrat does some redistricting and doesn't use that opportunity to gerrymander the district in their own benefit, I don't think that that's necessarily a fail. I think that's just not cheating. There's 9 different states that outlaw using redistricting as a means of gerrymandering votes. But I don't know which state you're referring to, because when you said that, I Googled it. I couldn't find anything. My guess is you're pulling this out of your ass.
That doesn't mean the Democrats who designed that were secret Republican operatives working for George Bush doing like fucking secret ops. Working for...
Uh-oh, folks. He's making gun noises. He doesn't know what gerrymandering is, but he's making gun noises. I'm talking about, like, the ACLU, the NAACP, and the findings from the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. And his retort is, pew, 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 pew. Touché, buddy. This kid walks into a fucking room, and I think to myself, that's too much. It's the fucking haircut, man. I'm telling you. You're rocking a look that does not match your fucking personality. And I don't understand why this kid's style icon has to be Eddie Vedder. I mean, fucking for real, dude. What's this fascination you kids have with the fucking 90s? Wasn't all that. You ever seen our porn? It's pretty fucking dull unless you got a thing for, like, hairspray and silicone titties that look like googly eyes. But don't worry, buddy. You know, my style icon is 1968 Steve McQueen, and my personality does not match that look either. So...
for the fucking Republicans to get them elected. It just means they screwed up. That's what it means.
Okay. In fantasy land. In imagination land. That's what it means.
It had a negative impact on Democrats, but there was no evidence whatsoever that it was purposely designed to screw them over.
There is a pile of evidence. And by the way, the reason that butterfly ballot story, by the way, just a quick reminder, is so interesting and why it was so fascinating. Is because in Palm Beach County, the punch holes, they had a punch hole system, and the punch hole system went into Al Gore's section. For Pat Buchanan's punch hole went into Al Gore's section. So you had a lot of elderly Jewish people voting for Pat Buchanan, and they were walking out talking to fucking polls, to poll takers and stuff, and election watchers going like, did I just vote for Pat Buchanan? And the reason why that's weird for elderly Jewish people to vote for Pat Buchanan is Pat Buchanan is a notorious Holocaust revisionist, kind of like Destiny is also a Holocaust revisionist, is my understanding. He's an out and out anti-Semite. So yeah.
Because again, it was designed by a Democrat.
And that's really the only thread that you're hanging on to, buddy. That's the only piece of evidence, is one person in the entire state of Florida is a Democrat. Forget that Jeb Bush and Katherine Harris are Republicans, and Jeb Bush is George W. Bush's brother, and Katherine Harris was his co-chair for his election campaign, and that the U.S. Civil Rights Commission deemed them responsible and recommended the Justice Department litigate against Jeb Bush. You can guess where that went. But George W. Bush blocked that from happening, because by then George W. Bush was the president.
Incompetence super describes it. Number one. It does not. That is so for to me. That would be my bias. Number two. I didn't get to finish my point again. You finished your point, and now you add to it. I got interrupted.
Filibuster.
You can't just say because I can't find another explanation, therefore conspiracy. That is like every couple's like go-to argument. Like I can't think of why this is reported incorrectly. Must be a conspiracy between the media. Must be.
Destiny just said it was a conspiracy for the media. That's what I'm telling you. These guys believe that the narrative that George W. Bush cheated is a right-wing, is a conspiracy from the left.
Actually, not being able to find another explanation for a person's behavior is actually a really strong indicator of potential intent. So, for example, I'll give you an example to this, okay? If you wanted to arrest a person for attempted murder, okay, and they had a gun in their pocket...
Okay, his example here is stupid. A better example, I'm not even going to get into that. A better example would be a CEO. Let's say Jeb Bush is like a CEO of a car company. And some people come up, some scientist faces come up to him and they say, hey, Jeb Bush, these airbags are defective. People could die. And then Jeb Bush says, fuck it, put them in anyways. And then people die. Is Jeb Bush responsible? Yes. Short answer. But listen, I appreciate what Vaush is doing here. I was mad at him, and I still am, and nearly unsubscribed and abandoned him because he posted pictures of some events at a kink parade or at a kink event and tried to pass them off as happening at a pride parade. And I thought that was dangerously homophobic, and he still will not admit that he did that. And I think that for his own benefit, he should do something that Destiny, stripper's name, would never do and admit he was wrong. And people would respect him more. He'd be the first Twitch streamer that anyone took seriously. You can't take these people seriously because they never learn anything. They never admit that they're wrong. And so how can you respect a person who never admits that they're wrong? But I do respect what he's trying to do here. He's trying to patiently explain to these sweat hogs that a criminal doesn't necessarily have to admit that they're a criminal in order to be seen as a criminal. Because they have to have that explained to them.
And they were walking through an alleyway towards their ex-girlfriend's house after posting
Convoluted
threatening text
explanation.
messages. The fact that there's no other reasonable explanation for them doing that, walking through that alley towards their ex-girlfriend's apartment with a gun in hand, is actually a really strong indicator towards their intent. So yes,
I agree, but you fucked yourself there, Vosh, because in your example, they sent threatening text.
Designed by a Democrat means nothing. It was produced by a printing company who didn't make sure the registration was right. So was the printing company in on it? Was it Dominion voting all along?
Dominion voting wasn't around in 2000. Dominion voting machines weren't around in 2000. Diebold voting machines. I can understand the confusion because they both begin with D, but it doesn't look good. And by the way, those Diebold voting machines had a lot of errors, both in 2000 and in 2004, and those errors favored George W. Bush both times. But Dylan does not look good here, getting Diebold and Dominion confused. He does not look good not knowing what gerrymandering is. As for the rest of it, I'm going to assume that it's not incompetence, that he does know what he's talking about, but he's just lying about everything else. So I think I have to do more on this. I'm going to do a Destiny clip too, because this is dangerous. I've been online and people actually believe these guys' story, Dylan and Destiny's stripper's name story, because they seem to believe that George W. Bush won Florida fair and square. And, you know, as we all know, if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it.